Talk, 1190, The Choice.
(9:34), 26 minutes before the hour of 10 o'clock at 1190 The Choice. We've got one very special guest with us in studio. We've been waiting for the other one to show up. I don't know where in the world he is. We're talking about a benefit that's taking place tomorrow evening at 10 p.m. at the Sound Factory Bar. That's 12 West 21st Street between 5th and 6th Avenues in Manhattan. It's for the friends and family of Larry Levan. It's a celebration. It's actually a dual celebration, celebrating what would have been Larry's 40th birthday and his mother Minnie's 78th birthday. Special guest in studio, man who was DJ'd for about as long as I've been alive, Terreno T. Scott. Good morning. How you doing?
That's low. Good morning. That's really low.
No, only kidding. T used to work at Better Days on 49th Street in Manhattan. Worked for a long time in and out of the Paradise Garage. In fact, was one of the first DJs other than Larry Levan that was actually allowed to play at the Paradise Garage. T, welcome. How you doing?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
Oh, surviving, man. Surviving.
That's just about what we can all say at this time.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell our audience, T, what made the Paradise Garage and Larry Levan such a special place and a special person?
Well, I guess one word: uniqueness. It had a quality all its own. It had a theme, a feel, a whole ambiance all its own. It had a complete personality. Actually, the Garage was Larry Levan.
Yeah.
His personality, what he was feeling, what he was thinking, what he was going through at that particular point. The Garage took on that whole ambiance type thing, and people actually fell into the habit of coming to the Garage just to see what Larry Levan was going through for that week. And and it was, it was nice. It was like actually being as close to him as they could possibly be without living with him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because he really did kind of put things out there for people. The other thing that struck me about the Garage over the years, T, was that there was such an effort on Larry's part to try and bring people together through the music that he played.
Yes, that he did. As a matter of fact, one of my complaints with Larry, my pet complaint with Larry, is that if I went to the dance floor, the Garage to dance, I would dance so he couldn't find me, because if he spotted me on the dance floor, he would mentally pick out every record that he knew would swoon me and keep me on the floor, and I would wind up I'd lose 10 or 15 pounds a night, because he would just pull out everything out of my head that he knew I would just dance to or react to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he did with everybody. It was like being on a transcendental communication level with the people that he knew and that he loved and he partied with. And I got that experience myself when I played at the Garage.
I remember the first night you played there. Tell us a little bit about what it was like for you. I know what it was like for everybody else that was there.
I'll tell you what it ended up being, a migraine. Mm-hmm. Because, actually what it is, it's like communicating on a mental level with 4,000 people. Mm-hmm. I had played for a long time before I actually worked at the Garage, but I had never experienced the feeling of communicating on a mental level with that many people for so long a period of time. Number one, we'd come into the Garage. I'd start about 11 o'clock. I'd start warming up. Mm-hmm. People would, and without realizing it, I'd be playing past the time when the people would come in. They'd start filtering in about 12, and I'd find myself still playing at 12 o'clock the next afternoon. So when I left, my head felt like the size of two elephants, because for 12 straight hours, you're communicating with these people on a mental level. And believe me, it's an experience that you can't put into words. It's something that you have to actually feel. You can only imagine. One can only imagine what it's like to play music, and you almost get a godlike feeling when you play something and you see 4,000 bodies react to what you played in a positive manner. It's a feeling of elation that just can't be duplicated.
I moved to New York in January. And I've heard not just from Mark, of course, but I've heard so many Garage stories, from people who are like, yeah, well, back in the day, we would go here, and we just go in there and dance, and we go on this night, and da-da-da. And it just amazes me some place has been closed for a while and been gone out of existence. It's been out of existence for such a long time that people are still talking about
Actually,
that.
it's been out of existence almost 10 years, and people still
seven.
Yeah,
It closed
and,
in 87.
you know, and they talk about it like it was, we were there like last night. And, you know, why do you think that is?
Well, garage. Well, let me start by explaining what I used to do at my club, Better Days. My theory was to have a place where people just came to party, and it transcended all levels of
difference.
Yeah, difference. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. No matter what your preference or lifestyle was, when you came in those doors, it was to dance, and you forgot about all the barriers and all. Now, Larry's Garage took that and expanded it to a level where it started out as one type of club, and all the other media or type of people found out about it, and they realized they had never heard music played like that. They had never seen such communication between bodies and people, and it just took on a
life of its own,
a life of its own, and people knew when they went there they were going to just be in for an experience that they just could not duplicate anywhere else. And it was like when you walked into the garage, you walked into another world.
Yeah, literally.
Another world. And you saw things. People that weren't used to certain sights and sounds saw things, and it just became accepted at the garage for some reason. You know, they'd say, wow, I never saw people dance like that before. People dancing in their underwear and
people crawling up into subwoofers.
And going to sleep with that booming bass. And they were like, it's happened. I heard about it, but I never saw it. But it's okay.
Yeah.
It's fine. And when you have a place like that, you can't help but gain that type of reputation. There's no other club, I don't think, in New York that is talked about still.
Maybe the Cotton Club from back in the way back in the days. But no, you're right. People still have that feeling for, and all the other entrepreneurs and club owners are endeavoring to this very day trying to duplicate.
Yeah, I was about to ask you, do you think there will ever be another club like that in New York?
I don't think so.
Kind of legacy?
I don't think so for one reason. Music has changed.
That's the truth.
Music has changed drastically, and New York has changed drastically. There's not the tolerance for the type of clubs that we used to have back then. There's no room for them.
And Garage, by the way, was only barely tolerated by the city because there were many instances where the city would try.
They tried.
Yeah, tried on many occasions to close the place down.
They tried to close it down. I think, who was it, Ma Bell that bought...
Ma Bell eventually bought it.
They eventually bought it, but they threatened many times to try and get them out of that building, and they tried everything to get him out of there, but it had such a strong following. And fortunately, I think Michael Brody and the various people that worked there had sort of a little bit of political weight.
A little.
That kind of helped them stay in there against all other wishes. But nowadays, you can't get away with that because the powers that be are just not going to allow it to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. 18 minutes before the hour of 10 o'clock. Lord, I thought it was an hour earlier there for a second. This is 1190 The Choice. Our guest in studio, Mr. T. Scott T. Do you still play?
Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, I'll be playing at that function that you mentioned.
Tomorrow
evening from 3 to 6.
Are you one of the people that plays classics? Are you playing the same thing now that you were playing during the
Basically, I'm playing classics, but there are some records that come out now that I really love. There are still some creative records being born, and I'll snatch those and I'll try and mix that ease them in with what I'm playing. But basically, I try to stay away from the boom 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 beats. That sound the same.
Yeah.
I'll try and take the ones that stand out far and the ones that I feel are creative. The problem is with music today is everything's being synthesized. Everybody that can push a key is making a record.
Yeah.
and there's no heavy creativity, and there's no real instruments, the warmth of real instruments like the records that Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes used to make, and Blue Magic, and all that type of stuff. So you find one that crosses that line and gets that feeling, and you try and snatch it up. Those are the things I like to really go for. And the classics, of course. And it seems to me the audiences never get tired of hearing classics.
It seems like, yeah, a lot of folks are into them. A lot of people request them. I'm curious, you were one of the people, you and Larry, in fact, were folks who got heavily involved in the remix business very early, when people started doing remixes in the late 1970s. Is that still, from your vantage point, a viable area? Is remixing what it used to be in your day?
Mostly remixing is almost out of the window now. It's more co-productions and reproductions, because I don't think there's a DJ alive that just remixes a record today. I mean, if you look, most of the DJs, you'll see additional production by, additional this by. In other words, the things that come out with the studios are putting out whatever they put out, and it's up to the DJ to go in and practically recreate the record. Now, when they put out a particular song, they put out 10 versions of that one particular song.
Yeah.
And they get sometimes they get even 3 or 4 DJs to do it. So he puts out 5 versions, and another DJ puts out 5 versions, and you got a whole album of one song.
Yeah. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it's a little over. What do you call it?
Overdone?
Overdone. I think it is. I think you should put out the best thing that you can find. Maybe 2 versions. Maybe even 3. But 5, 6, and 7 versions is a little bit too much. Let's put it this way. If you can't trust the music, if you can't trust it, then why put it out there?
You know, that's the true test of a really bad record, too. You know, when you get a record, well, the first true test is if you get the single and the album the same day. And the second true test of a really bad song is if the company comes up with 11 mixes on a record.
It's got to tell you they're searching, right?
There's one company in particular that does that a lot, and they've had a lot of stiffs and non-hits, you know. And I always ask, well, why do you have so many mixes? Or, well, which mixes? Well, you know, we had this jazz mix for, you know, stations that are more like this, and we have this mix for stations that are more like that. I'm like, but, you know, a hit is a hit. You know, did you play across the board?
What about the consumer and all this?
The problem is that the companies are doing that. I've never understood some of the decisions that some of the corporation executives make, because they're doing a situation like that. They wind up losing money, and then they're blaming it on dance music as a whole. They're wasting their own money.
That's an interesting way of looking
at it. And they're blaming it on the DJs and that mode of music. So now that music is being pushed into a corner because we don't make enough money on it. But they created the problem. You know, if your record is bad, if you have to ask 11 different DJs to make a mix on it, the record is bad. So why put it out in the first place?
Yeah.
You know, put out a good product. Look for a good product. You know, don't give every Tom, Dick, and Harry a contract, and he's producing all these bad records that you have to send around to all these DJs, paying them astronomical sums of money to do these mixes. So now you lose money from all these DJs doing mixes. You lose money on putting it out and distributing it, and the record still doesn't sell.
Yeah, that's a good point. T, you've actually gone back to school to learn some of the more state-of-the-art technologies that are coming out now.
That's true, yeah.
Tell us a bit about the garage sound system, because that was a big element of
it was a state-of-the-art
the
sound system for that time. Sound systems grew with Larry Levan. Actually, Larry kind of helped. Larry Levan, with the help of Richard Long.
Richard Long, sure.
Actually innovated the sound system market. And then you had other people. I don't want to take anything away from Alex Rosner. But Richard, let's put it, Alex Rosner did some wonderful things, but Richard Long was an innovator. He wasn't afraid to step into a puddle, not knowing if there was something sticky down on the bottom of it. He would actually stick his neck out. Larry would think of the idea, and Richard would set about to try and make it happen. And therefore, the quality of music played through his equipment was phenomenal.
Incredible.
Yeah. Now the reason I went back to school is because electronics have become so sophisticated now with computers and digital sound and so on and so forth. And if you're not right on top of it today, tomorrow it's changed.
Yeah.
And when I got sick for a little while, and had to drop out of the music business. And that as a matter of fact, I think it's 3.5 years that I was out of it. The equipment
went off in a whole
went
different
way
direction.
on into a different mode. So when I went back in the studio, which I did after coming back, half of the equipment that was on the racks I didn't know anything about.
Really?
So yeah, because of the things have become so sophisticated. Like just as much as doing remixes, and they're using the computer. They were using the Composer, the Apple Composer computer programs.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sitting and watching the engineer remix the record with the computer, and I was in a fog. I didn't know what he was doing. Prior to that, when I was doing remixes, I knew everything that was going on in the studio. I was on top of everything. So thereby being at the top of my creative level, because if you know what equipment does what and how it operates, when you get an idea, you can select the best equipment to do the job.
The best job,
you know. But if you don't know what you're limited if you don't know what equipment can do what.
Yeah, because some guys just bring their equipment in and they just play. You know, they just bring their records, they bring the raw materials. Something goes wrong, they got to call somebody.
They have to call somebody.
Yeah.
This is what actually got me solidified in the business in the beginning, because when I first started DJing, I was fresh out of electronics school, and I knew all about equipment. I was fresh out of the radio, television repair business.
Okay.
So I knew about equipment. So what kept me strong in the job is if an amplifier blew out while we were on air, in other words, while I had 500 people on the dance floor, I had a spare amp, and I was down there under the table changing the amp, right, while the people were still on the dance floor and never missed a beat on the turntables. So this kind of gave me my solidity in the business.
Larry kind of had a curiosity about that sort of thing, too.
Larry knew a lot about equipment, especially in the early days when his curiosity and his knowledge was genuine, you know, when he was really into it and he didn't have other distractions.
Yeah.
And he was really into it. He really put his mind to it, and he came up with some fantastic ideas.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he was one of those people who could almost, break down something and put it back together.
Yes. And he kept Richard Long's head reeling with ideas and innovations. And no sooner did Richard would put a thing together the way he liked it, that Saturday before they opened up the club, he was down there turning it around backwards to make it sound a different way. And he came up with some really innovative ideas.
Yeah.
Really innovative.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what made the garage
what it was.
Because first place, the sound system almost never sounded the same twice. You'd come in and you'd rearrange speakers, and sound was coming out of walls and up under floors, and lights were coming from everywhere. And this is which was intriguing the customers that were coming in, because they had never seen anything
like that before. You know what else was intriguing to me was that more often than not, you could go to the garage, and if you had a chance to get up in the booth, you'd see this lady that was sitting, obviously a little bit older than the rest of the crowd there. She was kind of sitting off in the corner and that sort of thing. And who was it? But it was Larry's mom.
Oh,
Good to see who you think I was getting ready to talk about.
I thought you were going to mention that famous lady with the JW.
No. Although she was another person too, but I mean Minnie Levan.
That was one of the most unique things. I had never seen DJ's mother actively take part in coming to a club and sitting there and staying all night.
Yeah, she would be there until the club closed.
Minnie would come when maybe an hour after Larry got there and stay until the club closed, and I was intrigued with that.
Yeah.
He had a very unique relationship with his mother.
Well, see, the thing was, she was the one, apparently, who got him started into music. She would sit and play different pieces, whether it was gospel or whatever. And Larry had a long and very deep love of gospel.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody that was at the garage after 7 in the morning knew that.
Mm-hmm.
And his mom, apparently, was the person who used to play this music for him and used to encourage him to use one of those little close and play phonograph things.
Right.
That was his.
He had a love of gospel. He had a love of jazz.
Yeah.
And a specific ear for the unknown, for the untried.
Yeah.
And we used to go shopping sometimes. We'd run around.
Oh, don't talk about
stores. And
Lord.
Larry would pick out things, and I'd kind of wrinkle my nose and say, I'm not sure. Larry would take that thing to the club, and after he played it once or twice, I'd say, holy cow. And if he wanted to feature a record for the night, he'd start playing that record at the beginning of the night. By the end of the night, that record was a hit.
Yeah.
They'd be running to the stores trying to find this non-existent record because the record only had maybe 10 copies when Larry got a hold of it. And next thing you know, the company would wind up going back in and repressing the record because he made it.
That happened with a couple of songs, actually. Yeah. And Larry, of course, also had a big career as a remixer. And there are going to be some artists who actually benefited from some of Larry's remixes that are going to be performing at this benefit for his friends and family. That is tomorrow evening. And that's Tuesday, July 19th, beginning at 10 p.m., which is kind of late for me, man. I got to get up every morning here.
No, just go back to your old days when you stayed up.
Shades of memories.
No, don't get... No,
I'm going to tell you, I can't do it either the same way. Now, I used to go to clubs all night and stay there, you know, night after night, and then get up the next day and go there again.
Yeah, go back to the same place.
Now, that number changed.
Well, see, LaDonna says that I'm a pretty conservative guy now that I've gotten older. And she didn't know me during the time that we used to go and do.
LaDonna.
When you were laying the groundwork for those gray hairs now.
Oh, I can tell you stories. Sometimes he is conservative now compared to where he used to be.
Yeah, I'm a little more relaxed than I used to be. But hey, you know, doesn't everybody
can hang with the best of them back then?
Well, yeah, I used to.
Still can.
Yeah, because I used to always feel like if I didn't go either to the garage or to the loft, I was missing something. Because there was always some piece of music that you would fall in love with within, you know, you get there 15 minutes later, you'd find it, you'd hear
and
a song.
And it's unbelievable. It's no matter how many records you thought you had,
they'd always come up with something
else. You know? Nowadays, it's like you can go for a month,
3 or 4 months before you get the Jones comes down.
No sooner did you get what you thought to be a complete collection, all you had to do was leave your club and go to another club, and you were out of date already.
Yeah.
You go down to the garage after leaving my club, and I say, yeah, now for once I got everything, and then go down to the garage, and oh man, where did he get that?
Yeah.
You know, and it was phenomenal.
Yeah, it was. I mean, Larry was the kind of person who could, at 9:30 on a Sunday morning, actually play "Oh Mary, Don't You Weep" by Aretha. He had a favorite version of all of these gospel
Everything
songs.
He had a special.
He had a special version of it. He'd play "Oh Mary, Don't You Weep" by Aretha Franklin. I think that was the Amazing Grace album. It was a live album, at any rate. And people would literally, I mean, folks that act like they were in church. They start waving their arms. They were going to, and you're talking about.
They would drive me crazy because they come to the club next day and ask for it.
I mean, don't you have that Aretha Franklin song that Larry played?
Well, Larry has it.
Lord.
But Larry held a special place in everyone's heart, and it'll be there
tomorrow. Yeah,
it'll be there, and tomorrow that spirit will be there.
I think Mel Sharon, who's putting this evening together, has actually managed to get some tapes that Larry made.
Mel Sharon and Francois Kevorkian.
And Francois Kevorkian, yeah. I think
David DePino.
Yes, because David helped get the space.
David helped
Sound
get
Factory
the space,
Bar.
right.
Yeah. And David was one of the other people. What were there? There couldn't have been more than 10 people in all of those years that Larry felt comfortable allowing to play that sound
Larry
system.
Patterson,
you were one. Larry
myself,
Patterson.
David DePino, Joey Llanos. And at one point, MG, who actually did the original.
Yes, I saw him a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I thought he said he talked to you. He called me this week.
Yeah.
He stays in touch.
I think maybe Victor Rosado. I think Victor Rosado.
Victor Rosado came much later. He came near the end. Yeah, he was
near the end.
He came really near the end.
Oh, wait a minute. Speaking of coming in really near the end.
The devil.
Oh, Lord.
You've been live a long time. We just mentioned your name.
That's right. We certainly did just mention your name.
Llanos.
Joseph Llanos has arrived. Late. Better late than never.
And I thought I was the one that was going to come running in late.
Well, I work for them.
I just got off from work, my buddy. Don't even try it. I got off from work at 8:15 and had to run through New York City traffic.
Good morning, Joey. How you doing?
Good morning, Mark.
All right. Welcome. Glad you're here, LaDonna. Joey. Now,
haven't seen you.
It's out of the hour, right? Joey is also playing music tomorrow evening at this benefit for the friends and family of Larry Levan. Joey swore up and down that he was going to remind you, T, of an incident that took place in the garage many moons ago. I don't know whether he's going. He looks like he's a little sleepy now, so I'm not sure if he's going to run it. You're not that sleepy.
I don't think I want to put him on the spot about
about what?
Blowing up a sound system.
I didn't blow up the sound system. I blew one speaker, and y'all carried on like it was. As a matter of fact, Larry used to blow 10 speakers a night.
But it was his system.
Yeah, but it was his sound system. That's the only way. But you know, I blew. I think 1 or 2 speakers that night.
I know the song that you blew them.
The second night that I played, probably was.
Relight My Fire.
Well, we don't want to get into how many speakers you blew, because I was the one that was on the maintenance.
But I had that reputation for the rest of my life because of that.
Sure do.
Sure did.
Not even
even to the point where I was asked, they told me down at, they said, now, T, at the Sound Factory bar, you have to kind of take it easy because you have a reputation of blowing their speakers. I said, wait a minute, excuse me, I have never played at the Sound Factory bar before. They said, oh, you didn't?
Oh, this goes back all that time?
I've never played I've never played at the Sound Factory bar in my life. Tomorrow will be my debut.
All right. Gentlemen, we're out of time. T, Joey, thanks a lot for being with us. And, of course, we're talking about the benefit for the friends and family of Larry Levin. It would have been Larry's 40th birthday, and it would be his mom Minnie's 78th birthday is actually coming up this week as well. That's at the Sound Factory Bar, 12 West 21st Street. That's between 5th and 6th Avenues in Manhattan, and it all starts at 10 p.m. We're just about out of here. Stay tuned after the news with JJR Rainey for the new GBE with Imhotep Gary Bird. LaDonna, who we have coming in tomorrow?